when are we getting the WAP dance?
I don't know.
Everybody
We need
in
the
chat's
story. We need the
waiting
story. You're
for
getting
it.
exposed right now.
I think I said if I had like 3K subs or something, I'd do it, right?
You presumably hit 3K
Yeah.
subs, and we are still waiting.
Basically.
So look, chat wants it. I think this has to happen at some point.
We've lost all control. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another Bot Lobby podcast episode. I'm Grandmaster GOJJ, one of your hosts today, as always, joined by Katie Bedford. We've taken a little bit of some time off in preparation for Warzone 2, Katie, and it's basically here, right? At the time of this recording, it's dropping tomorrow.
At the time of this recording, less than 24 hours at this point before everything opens up. And that seems to be all the timeline can talk about, and for good reason. I know we're all very, very excited.
Of course. Well, today, as per the usual, we have a very special guest, and really excited to bring this guest in for a modicum of different reasons, Katie. Obviously, one of the best Warzone players out there, you know, a top earner, arguably the best part of the best trio that's ever graced the planet from a Warzone perspective. And then also recently got signed by a brand new org, who's also picking up on a lot of other content creators. So without,
They've been busy.
Yeah, they've been super busy. So without further ado, we want to go ahead and bring him in. We want to talk to the man, the myth, the legend himself. We're talking to Newbz, LG Newbz these days. Newbz, my friend, how are we doing?
Doing pretty good on this rainy day here.
Yeah,
Been a busy, couple weeks for you.
It has.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us because, again, like I was talking about right before I brought you in, there's a lot going on right now in the life of Newbz, right? Probably, I mean, in my opinion, a long time coming with this most recent org signing, but also, like, you're ramping up for Warzone 2. I know you've been ripping the Modern Warfare 2 vibes, but I'm sure you're ready for Warzone 2.
Yeah, that's what I've been looking forward for the last, month?
Yeah.
Since CODNext, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're going to talk about CODNext. We're going to talk about Modern Warfare 2. We're going to talk about kind of your story. But as per usual, Katie and I like to throw a little rapid fire questions at us to break the ice a little bit and hear from you some of your favorite things about the past 2 or 3 years or so that you've been doing this. So we'll go back and forth. Katie and I will bounce back and forth and ask you a few questions. Katie, I'll start, and then we can just, you got the next, and we'll just rock and roll. This one is interesting because you usually, play with 2 other people, but there's a lot of options here. So the first question is your favorite person to stream/compete with. You have to pick one.
Pick one. It's got to be Tom.
Okay, my God,
Okay.
Tom, I love it.
All right. Who was the first creator or competitor that gave you an opportunity?
That's a great question. I think it is Tom.
Really?
I think it was Tom. Yeah, it was. I think we played I think it was one of those Mazer events back in the day. They were
Wow, that's a long
TKRs
time ago.
when TKRs were still huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is a throwback. Makes a lot of sense though. And then you guys obviously never, really separated. What is your favorite streaming/competitive moment ever?
Probably winning World Series, I'd say.
Shoot. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect that. I respect that.
All right. Well, we teased this question to you beforehand, so I hope that you have thought of your answer. Favorite meta of all time?
Kilo MP5, without a doubt.
Okay. See? Thank you. A man of class and distinction.
Yep.
We love the Kilo.
Okay. I don't know about class and distinction. Kilo MP5?
Yes. Okay.
The Kilo
Next
it just
question,
didn't
Coach.
move. It was so
Next
easy.
question,
Okay.
Coach.
Fine. Favorite Warzone competitive format, if any?
Gotta either be trios customs or a 2v2.
Sure. Okay, well, pick one because those are
Yeah,
very
you
different.
gotta pick one.
I gotta pick one.
Yeah.
I gotta say trios.
Heck yeah.
Customs.
Okay. All right. Least favorite duo to compete against?
I think. Wait, is there a certain period or is it just of all time?
Of all time, was there a particular duo you'd come up against that you were like, damn it?
I'd probably say it was Aiden and Reese.
Sure.
We'd always get
Okay.
bot lobbies against them. And it was just.
I mean, they might have been doing something weird, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's very true. Aiden and Rated early days were just disgusting, 2v2s in particular. Do you have, so you've obviously won a ton of tournaments. Do you have any game day rituals? From dating way back 50 years ago or something you've picked up more recently?
Gotta be getting Chick-fil-A, dude. Game day. Yeah.
What's your order?
Yep,
What's your order?
yep. It's just like a chicken sandwich. Chicken sandwich.
Sure.
Nothing else? Just a chicken sandwich?
Yeah, just chicken sandwich, fries, drink, you know?
Okay, fries and drink.
Yeah, I gotta
Okay.
keep it classy.
This might be my favorite episode already. I just was not expecting the Chick-fil-A plug. I'm here for it. Chick-fil-A, if you're looking for a good podcast to sponsor, you just let us know. Oh, wow. That's amazing.
All right, if you could do any dream brand deal right now, and it's not Chick-fil-A, who would it be?
Chipotle. Second favorite.
Chad, we get Adidas, we get Nike, we get Red Bull, and we get Chipotle, and I like it.
Dude,
I like it.
Honestly, I agree. If I could have free Chipotle for a year or something like that, like some of those tourneys that gave out that, I mean, that's a big win in my book. I love it. I love the food takes. I am so here for it. Well, Newbz, thanks for entertaining us there at the beginning of this. And I want to, as we kind of take a step back and talk about some of those moments we've already brought up in the rapid fire questions, I really want to start, even before we start talking about Luminosity, I really want to start with you. Like, I want to start with your beginnings. It doesn't have to be some, drawn out 2-hour monologue, but I do want to hear, because I think a lot of people, myself included, knew you had some sort of a competitive background before Warzone, but didn't really know the details of that. And then also, even before that, like, when did you get started in Call of Duty? So take me back to the very beginning. When was Newbz first entry into the Call of Duty world?
I think it was whenever MWR was released, because that's the first game I think I played S&D and actually got my name out there, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started in the S&D world. Let's fast forward a little bit. What brought you into the Warzone world? Like, what was that transition like? How long did that take? Was it something that you just decided on the fly, or was it kind of like a slow process?
It was a slow process because I was originally playing Challengers still, but I couldn't get a team, so I think I just started playing Warzone and I found it fun. Then found CMG and I just started playing wagers, $1 wagers, $5, stuff like that. And just got into the comp scene that way.
We have a lot of people who have started with those CMG. I mean, there's so many different sites, but a lot of them who've started those stories with those $1 wagers and have really built from that point. And I think it's kind of an interesting when we get to later questions that we always ask people on this podcast, which is, and we'll get there with you, kind of what advice you'd offer to people. I think it is always a reassuring story to the upcoming next generations in Call of Duty, GOJJ, that everyone and some of the best, like Newbz, they all started at that same point at that $1 wager.
Yeah, so you're ripping $1, $5 wagers early, and you talked about Tom potentially giving you kind of your first big break. Where was the first kind of jump start for the Newbz brand, right? Because just playing wagers doesn't automatically give you success, albeit sometimes it can if you get a little bit lucky and you start, slamming wins every single time. But talk to me about the first kind of bit of success that you grabbed and took off with.
I think the first bit was, I think there was a $20,000 Go Boom code red. I think it was me and Tekka. I think we placed second in that. And then the second part was I think the 100K NYSL, the first ever draft win. It was me, Teep, and Doug ended up winning that. So
yeah, so you had kind of started with a little bit of success and then found these big tournaments, and that was really sort of projectiling your career into the stratosphere, because you really have been insanely talented, of course, but also just winning. You've won a ton, whether it's with Huskers and Verdansk, but some 2v2 stuff, or if it's with TBE. And kind of speaking of TBE, we always ask this question when we're hearing your story. Where did Newbz come from? And then talk to me a little bit about that story of TBE in your name.
How did we come? I totally forgot. I think it all stemmed from that mazer that I was telling you about. I'm pretty sure because that's how I met Reese too. It was me, Reese, Ben, Tom back then. And I think afterwards, I think we actually didn't play that good, but I think he just liked how we played and he just asked us for another trios tournament, and that's where it stemmed from. So
Okay, so that's where is that where TBE stand?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did
In your
Newbz
Twitter
come from?
bio. So in your Twitter handle, I believe you were saying previously that you spoke it into existence. You had some sort of witchcraft because that predates that tournament, correct?
Yeah. I don't know. I just had the TBE was just a joke at the time. Like whenever I made my Twitter, people used to have some TBE in their name. I thought that was cool, so I put it in, which meant the best ever, right?
Yeah.
And a few years later, it was Tom Ben Ed somehow, some way. So.
And it's funny. It's a little spooky that you put that in your name, and then not only does that become your trio, but then the best trio in the Caldera era, certainly of Warzone, and some of the top earners as well. I'm not gonna say, speaking into existence, but that's certainly what it feels like it was.
Nah, it definitely feels like that for sure.
Yeah, it's super cool. Where did the name Newbz come from? Because you've had that for a while, right? Like even through challengers.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I just had it from when I was growing up, and it was just something different compared to everyone else's, so I just kept with it.
Heck yeah! So it was just a random name that you came up with?
Yeah, just a random name. Yeah.
I like it. That's kind of similar to GOJJ brand and things like that. So I'm here for that. The long-standing names that have no backstory besides it was a random name I came up with and it stuck is always a win in my book for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've heard a little bit of that background story, but let's actually talk about Warzone proper and your bout with TBE, because I think a lot of people know this, but I would love to kind of hear from your perspective, this trio and why it makes sense for you. Obviously TBE is now become not only just a funny tagline that you put on your name, but it has now become this iconic trio name that people know. You say TBE in any Warzone setting, and anybody that follows the scene knows who you guys are, and that TBE represents that trio. So when was the first time that really you, Ben and Tom became close? And then was there a moment throughout competition where you were like, oh, we can't lose. We have to keep running this as hard as we can?
Hold up. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, I blanked out for a second.
Oh, you're good.
What did you ask?
No, yeah. Just tell me a little bit more about the TBE story, and was there a moment in particular where you were like, "Oh, we're gonna win everything. We need to run with this."
I think after we won a few of those, were they proving grounds back in the day, right?
Yeah.
In Verdansk, yeah. We won a few of those, and I think we went on 2 or 3 for those, and we were like, man, we could really make a run, so we just stuck with it.
Were there any points where it got rocky? Because from the outside, all we see is the success, right? And even if you aren't winning tournaments, it feels like, if anything, you're on the podium, right? And you're winning some amount of money. Were there rough patches within this? Because it's still going strong now.
No, there's really never been rough patches. We're even though we lose, we still have fun. In the tournaments, right?
Yeah.
We're upset for for a few right after, but after we're all pretty good and chill.
Yeah, is there an X factor? Is there a reason the chemistry just works, or you guys just quickly became friends and it's just oh, we're gonna have a good time no matter what? We've got this in the bag.
I think it's just because that we know that we're all talented. We could do. Everyone can slay. Everyone can IGL. We all take turns IGLing. So it's not a problem, right?
Yeah, which is certainly not something that every team can say, right? What's interesting about this, and kind of where I was going with some of these questions, are TBE has been a consistent trio since Verdansk essentially, and Caldera in particular. You guys came into your own. We're at the top of the leaderboards all the way through basically the entirety of Caldera, except for the 100K. Obviously shakes things up with the solo YOLO. So it's you guys had something that nobody else had, which was long-standing experience. And anybody that has ever roomed with anyone or worked with anybody knows there's always rough patches in communication and friendship. And there just never seemed to be a chink in the armor, if you will, for your trio. So that was where the question was coming from, is have you guys really never had a ton of disagreements, thought about splitting up? It's just really been all amazing all the way through the last year.
Yeah,
that's really a unicorn situation in COD, if that's the case.
Yeah, no, we never really had any of that. At least that I can remember. Maybe we'll have a disagreement here and there of what we should have done, right? But we quickly sort that out.
Yeah, and that certainly seems to come with this idea of like, oh, we're all amazing. We all know we're amazing or good at the game, rather, whatever. Check the egos at the door. And you're also there's no specific IGL. There's nobody like, I'm in charge of this group, telling us where to go. You guys kind of trade off in that, and that has been something pretty unique to your team as well. It's cool.
Yep.
Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of moving into more present day. TBE had its long-standing run and super successful, and then there was a little bit of a step off. Of course, World Series of Warzone win was massive for you guys on the first World Series. And so as we kind of look towards the present day, and then as we start looking towards the future, let's talk through CODNext, because you had a chance to travel out to CODNext with Katie and 198 other content creators or competitors. Talk to me about that experience. What was that like? Have you ever done anything like that, like traveling that far for a massive event? Like walk me through that.
Well, that was like my first event as like a content guy, right? Like not actually competing. Because like I've went to a few lands prior, like for CWL and stuff, but that was like my first ever big content event. It was definitely amazing.
What was your because I assume you watched the most recent streams from the Warzone specific event that they showcased for Warzone 2 recently, a few days ago. But what was your impressions of the game, both getting that hands-on experience with it and seeing what you've seen recently, considering it comes out at the time of this recording tomorrow?
I think they did change a few things that we had a few concerns, like some looting. Like in the original, when we played at CODNext, I think like ammo didn't pick up automatically. I think that was like a big thing that ended up changing this time around, which I'm happy with. Because I don't want to be sitting there like looting for ammo for like 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know looting was one of those major topics of discussion, I believe, along with things like kind of AI and everything else. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. But when you look at the map, it's going to give you much more of an ode to Verdansk as opposed to Caldera. And did you have a preference between those two? Obviously, you had a massive amount of success on Caldera, but did you kind of have a preference in map design to one or the other?
Probably just like the preference of it being a little more flat land compared to Caldera. Caldera was just like an elevator. Like you had to go up so many mountains and stuff, right, to get to areas until they added balloons, which made it easier to rotate. So probably say like Verdansk was probably like the better map.
Yeah, a bit cleaner, sure.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of start looking at Warzone 2, and I know there's a lot of what ifs or what will happen, and we're just gonna kind of have to wait and see. I think I would love to hear from your perspective. Like, is DMZ something that you're gonna touch at all from your perspective, or is it kind of like I just want to run through Warzone 2? Like, talk to me a little bit about your plans for Warzone 2 and DMZ.
I'd probably give it a shot. I'm not too like I've never played a game like it's supposed to be like Escape from Tarkov, sort of, right?
Kinda.
I've never played like a game like that, so I'll probably give it a go, see how I feel about it, and go from there.
Well, my curiosity about that is, and I don't think necessarily they have to be great, but if they're both good and you are provided with two Call of Duty experiences that aren't multiplayer, you can play Warzone, say you grind all day, you get a little tired, you switch over to DMZ. I'm very curious to see what kind of commingling relationship those two game modes can have, and obviously pure speculation if any sort of competitive aspect would creep up from a format like DMZ. Certainly interesting to speculate on. GOJJ, I know kind of the curiosity, the excitement, the news of the hour, and really recently has been involving Newbz, has been involving a lot of other major players in the space.
Yeah, it's time for us to get to the conversation at hand, Newbz. You just got signed by Luminosity Gaming. I mean, first of all, congratulations, my friend. That is super sick. Picked up a whole Warzone squad. So, lot to talk about here. Just break down a little bit about that process, about the LG deal. I mean, I know it was probably exciting to really, get signed by an org, but this is something that you've been wanting / talking about / leaking / tweeting about for a really long time. So talk me through that process.
It all started off because I think the Alex, like his name is Alex, like GLogix on Twitter, right? He tweeted out like what content creators interested in LG should sign, right?
Yeah.
And I actually ended up responding to that tweet, and he ended up shooting me a DM. And that's how it all spired from there. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Shot my shot.
Let's go.
And it worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Wait, and had you had previous conversations with anyone before then? Because again, this is we had talked so many times about you on the podcast before we actually had the pleasure of having you join us, and it was always a conversation of, when is it Newbz time? Obviously, your teammates are TBE. You're going to see Allman, Tommy, they're getting picked up. Everyone else is getting picked up. And we're sitting here saying he's such a high earner. He's so successful. When is he going to be a part of a large org? So did you have people reaching out to you previously, or was this kind of shooting your shot with LG the only conversation you'd had?
No, I actually had like 2 prior, but there was one. I will say, like, I'm not gonna say the name obviously, but there was an org that strung me along for quite a while, and ended up like stringing me to the point to where the first org that offered backed out. So I was just waiting on the second, and the second org never ended up signing me. So then I was out for like any org up until like now.
So you had 2 ongoing conversations. You're perhaps more inclined to the second. They string you along to the point that you lose both.
Yeah.
But then you end up on LG. So there's a very happy ending to this story. But I mean, we know you're a private person, so that wasn't something that you were going to really talk about publicly. But that had to have been a pretty disheartening experience.
Yeah, no, it was. But I mean, I knew something would come along eventually. Like, seeing how the Warzone scene was, like, there was so much money like being thrown into it. Like, there was bound to be another org coming around the corner signing people. So I wasn't too worried.
So you've shot your shot with LG, DMs, you guys go through some contract negotiations. When did you find out that, oh, they're also signing like a ton of other people that I also get to, like, you know, be like org mates with, if you will, like teammates with?
I think, when did I find out?
Yeah.
I think right as I signed, like I got put in like a group chat with all the people like they're signing, right? And I saw like a bunch of them, and I was like, oh, okay, like they're investing heavily into the Warzone scene, so I was like hyped for that.
Yeah, investing heavily is a great way to put it, because you've got you, Huskers, P90, Breadman, and then most recently Kins was also announced with that, right? So you're in this massive, so you're saying, wait, you're telling me you didn't know Huskers was going to be a part of LG until you joined the group chat?
No. Well, I knew him, but like the other ones I didn't. Like Bread I didn't know yet. I don't think I knew of P90 up until like a while before they announced, because we all had to film it together, right? So that's when I found out. And yeah, so that's how I found out for them.
So where did filming take place? How was filming? Because look, I'm seeing people crawling across the floor. I'm seeing there's a lot going on in that video.
We actually filmed it in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, where like Husk and P90 live. So it was close to them. They had to do like a sponsored thing, so it was just way easier for everyone to be in that area to film it.
Yeah.
And we filmed at like some Airbnb. That's where all like the shots were taken.
Heck yeah. Was this like somebody scripted this, right? I would assume. Like, did they hand they hand you a script and be like, all right, hey buddy, you signed up to be a Warzone player, but now you're an actor. Like, what was walk me through that process? That was crazy.
Yeah, no. I think the night before we had our flights, they sent us like a script, and I was rereading. I was like, oh man, dude, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. And then it ended up coming out. You saw.
Yeah.
Were there retakes involved?
Oh yeah, I messed up like the first scene. I think I messed it up like 7 times in a row.
7 times. Wait, I'm watching the video right now, and obviously starts with Breadman. You guys are all in the bunk bed. So you're telling me you messed up sitting up in the bunk bed and rubbing your eyes?
Well, there's like a few lines they wanted, but yeah, they ended up just chalking it and making it simpler. Because
look, an actress I am not, so I probably would have been as anxious as you are. Something like that that can be nervous when you have cameras pointed in your face like that.
Here's the thing. I've been there. Sometimes I try to memorize sponsor reads, and you get about halfway through the line, and your brain just collapses.
It's gone.
That's awesome. Well,
I think I think they even threw in like one of those, one of the, like the mistakes towards the end.
Yeah.
No, a blooper.
Yeah, the bloopers at the end were comedy. That's awesome. So you've met your team. You're part of LG. You guys filmed this whole thing, which was hilarious and a cool way to announce it. Of course, Kins kind of gets brought into the mix after the fact, but you probably can't tell us a lot of these answers. But from LG perspective, like how's the first month or so been with LG? Are you guys like actively working on like content as a group? Is there like anything specific that you like are supposed to like do with them that the public will see?
Well, we filmed like one content, which was the one they posted the other day on their channel, right? I have to do like a few headshots, stuff like that, like a few intros, but other than that, nothing too crazy just yet.
Cool.
Have they talked about, and obviously, again, what you would be able to say on a podcast, but have they talked about their future plans for content they want to do with you guys? Because leaning in this heavily to Warzone, obviously, we can only read the tea leaves, but if you're going to sign that many people, then it tends to signal that Luminosity would be deeply invested in all aspects of getting the most out of you guys as Warzone players. So have they talked to you guys about that, about any future plans?
Not yet. Not that I've heard of, but they do want to do like get content with us as like a 4, right? That's the only thing I've heard from them at the moment. They've told me.
Cool.
Well, we'll certainly look forward to seeing how that ends up playing out.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see it. The org conversation is a fun one because there's some teams that are dropping people and there's a lot of teams that are picking up people, whether it's content creators, competitors, or otherwise. So again, congratulations on that. A fun story and hilarious video. We'll make sure to link the video down in the description of the YouTube video.
Wait, hold on. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there was a question in chat that is very much so needing to be asked from Dean and Newbz. When are we getting the WAP dance? Because I will not say the whole thing. It's been about 8 months. So when are we getting that?
I don't know.
Whoa,
I'll have to wait and see.
Tell a story. What's the story?
I know. We need context.
I don't know. They just came up with they want me to do the WAP. I don't know.
There's definitely a story here that chat's gonna have to tell us because you won't.
Okay, Almond is bumping to someone in chat knows what the whole story is. He's a scammer.
No.
Tell the story, Newbz. Everybody in chat's
we need the story. You're getting exposed right now.
Why are they saying you're a scammer, Newbz?
Okay. It's because I think back in the day, this is Verdansk. I think they clipped it, and I think I said if I had like 3K subs or something, I'd do it, right?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you said 3K subs. You presumably hit 3K subs, and we are still waiting on the WAP.
Yeah, basically.
Look, chat wants it. I think this has to happen at some point.
We've lost all control. I love it. I love it. We're having a great time. Okay, LG, WAP. We've talked Verdansk. We've talked TBE in the craziness that was. We've kind of been able to like walk through your story here. Is there like, I think the best part is talking with you now after the fact, because I know there was a while you and I had some conversations in DMs too about like kind of the grind and getting into the content creation world and competitor world, and Katie kind of teased this earlier, but there's a lot of people trying to do what you're doing, right? There's a lot of people trying to act in videos and make content and play in tournaments and become larger in the space. Like, what would be your advice to anybody else trying to kind of follow in your footsteps that's maybe more tournament inclined?
Honestly, I think just create more content, like do YouTube, do TikToks. Like a lot of these tournaments, like as of like right now, they don't really look at the skill of players. They look at like obviously your socials more than anything, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say just focus on content, like especially if you're competing, it'll help you in the long run get into these big tournaments and stuff like that.
Well, and speaking of content, do you have plans of your own? Anything you're ramping up as we get into Warzone 2? Because we know when something first drops, when you get a game that is first hitting, like we're going to get with Warzone 2 tomorrow, that is one of those major opportunities. So what plans do you have?
Honestly, just do what I've been doing. Just keep on pushing out like YouTube, TikTok, stuff like that. Right. Yeah, that's about it.
Are you going with? I've seen some of the growth that you guys have had on TikTok. I know you were working with an editor for a while, and it's been great to see. Are you leaning more heavily into like high quality, high action clips? Are you doing some educational content, or is it mostly just kind of gameplay and gun videos and things like that?
Just gameplay, gun videos, like funny clips, just like that.
Yeah, I like it. I love it. Well, Newbz, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. This has been a blast already. The Chick-fil-A answer at the beginning sent me, and the Chipotle sponsorship sent me. Appreciated those a ton. Is there anything else that, like, maybe any shout outs to your community, anybody that you want to talk about, or anything we haven't asked you that you would love to kind of mention before we close it out here?
No, not that I could think of at the moment.
No WAP, nothing to say.
No,
Absolutely
no.
not.
I plead the fifth on that.
All right, well, I'll shout somebody out for you. We've got Smixie in the chat supporting. I do want to hear to kind of finish up our episode with you today before we go into some of our Shitters Digest content. To hear a little bit about the duo. You and Smix ran quite a bit of co-ed events back in the day. Some more so now. Are you guys intending to continue to duo for co-ed events and generally play together more often, or are we lulling? We changing teammates? What's going on?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Sure.
We'll have to wait and see.
We get nothing out of Newbz.
I love it. I'm so here for this. This is the best interview I've ever had in my entire life. Newbz, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We love Smixie in this house, so we'll wait and see with bated breath to see if you guys continue to play together. But appreciate you hopping on and kind of telling your story and kind of where you came from.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Before we get into Shitters Digest, can we spam some W's in the chat for Newbz? That was my favorite interview maybe we've ever had. Can we just get some W's and some heart spams in the chat for Newbz?
Big dubs, please. Big dubs.
He got me crying laughing, and was fantastic. And so we've got a little more content to talk about before we close this episode out. We've got our section called the Shitters Digest, where we're talking about all the drama in the scene, anything crazy going on outside of course, our favorite guests that we bring on. And I think the first thing, Katie, that we have to talk about is what we've already started the conversation on, which is the org conversation. There's a lot going on in the organization side of esports, specifically around Warzone, right?
I like the clap to emphasize that.
I'm clapping. Good. I'm here for it.
I can hear it. It's great.
So Luminosity, they signed 5 people back to back. At least they all get announced around the same time. We had the 4-person content video with Huskers, P90, Bread, and Newbz all part of that. Then we had Kins, right, signed and announced right after that. So 5 people get signed by Luminosity. They're hitting Warzone hot and heavy very early in the game before Warzone 2 drops.
Have we seen a major org signing in Warzone ever that was as substantial as what LG has done before the Warzone 2 launch?
Not that many people all at one time. There have been a series of people. I mean, we had the kind of Boston inception of that team that then started signing people for content over the next 6 to 8 months, where we saw them kind of string along, but nothing like this. And I think a lot of other signings that were really influential. We had Iceman Isaac get signed by the Guard. That was a massive moment, and his announcement of him kind of retiring from the military and actually going full-time finally, which is hilarious that he wasn't full-time because he's been killing it, right? So he gets signed by the Guard. Then we've got, I made this tweet with all of these people's names on it. We had, on the kind of B tier orgs, if you will, the smaller orgs, we had Omit going hot and heavy as they usually do into the Warzone scene. They picked up Sage and Veiled, Autorize, and Mayapo, which is the tourney demon squad, right? We had Uncivil Queen signed by Carnage Clan. And then we had Team Diverge go hard as well, not only signing, but also taking their current signees and their new signees of Shifty and Hisoka, all putting them into a content house in LA. So it's very obvious that there is
an LA content house.
Correct.
That's going to be, look, if there's one thing I know that tends to hold true when it comes to young men in content houses. Keep it clean, people. Throw your trash away. I know y'all are going to order a lot of DoorDash. It goes in the trash. No, everything else, do whatever you want. But look, I've seen this game play out a few times. Go throw your trash away, okay?
Yeah, I respect that. No, their content they've been putting out is actually pretty impressive. So TD has been doing fantastic. We see Shifties in the chat. Let's go. So we've got a lot of people being signed. On the reverse side of the coin, we go to what I would call an S+ tier org, some of our top orgs. We start looking at FaZe, what's going on with FaZe. Nothing much has been stirred around the pot when it comes to Warzone. No big changes, ups or downs. But then you swing over to, of course, Complexity. We've got the Baka Bros over there that have been killing it. You've got, obviously, Tim the Tatman a part of that, which are all going to be very directly tied to Warzone. I know the Baka Bros have been working directly with Activision on a lot of events and things like that, which is great.
I recently did the Boktober Bash, which was not Warzone 2, but S&D. But I do know that they have a lot of plans for the future, which will, of course, involve Warzone 2.
Yeah, and then finally, this is kind of our hot topic of the point of order here, is that on the opposite side of the coin, we've got 100 Thieves letting Tommy and Raided's contracts lapse, right?
Expire,
Did not re-sign them back. Tommy, of course, the top earner in Warzone ever, rated inside the top 5 as well, I believe. So massive kind of drops from a competitive side. And this is where the actual conversation is what is the value of a Warzone competitor / content creator for orgs? And you and I both have kind of some history in esports and some background to some of this. We don't have all of it, though. So a lot of this conversation we're about to have, Katie, is some conjecture and some, estimated assumptions based on what we know about the industry, right? But it is very interesting to see both of those two players get, their contracts be let expire and not re-signed. And now they're homeless, if you will, from the org side of things.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Usually when it comes to org signings tend to always benefit the org more than they are going to benefit the content creator signing to them. That's just how the nature often of that power dynamic plays out. That's why, and I've said it before, if you're signing with an org, you usually want to sign on a singular year contract and work from there. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you sign a multi-year contract, you blow up, and then you're stuck at rates and levels from before the blow up, but you're contractually obligated. There's nothing you can do about it. We have seen that situation play out before. But it is a great question, though, because I say, as you said, yes, maybe the org is going to benefit more, but to what extent are they benefiting, and is it truly going to be worth it to them in the end? And what I mean by something like that is, if you are an amazing competitor, you still need something beyond that, especially if you're not a competitor who is in an actual league. Are you a pro player? Because competitive Warzone, professional play, very different things. And I think when you come to signing a pro player, it's going to have different metrics for an organization to use. If you're a competitive Warzone player, you have to have those stats to back it up, because the question is, how are they going to monetize you? And if they're not monetizing directly through your stream, then what are they actually getting out of it every time you win a tournament? Are they taking a cut of the proceeds? How is that working for them? Is that cut even a drop enough in the bucket for them to care? And I'm not surprised perhaps to see 100T looking at this and maybe saying, we don't want to lean into this anymore. Obviously, we are all full steam ahead at Project X. They've been putting out a lot of information about that recently. But it is that assessment. Is this worthwhile to...
Oh, I think we may have lost Katie, at least for a moment. So I'll kind of cover until she gets back, unless it's my side. It looks like I'm still good and she is not. So we'll keep going right here. F's in the chat for Katie. But she was making a really, really good point, right? And because when it comes to monetization of orgs, one of the massive ways that orgs monetize is actually through sponsorships, right? You bring in sponsors, and what you'll do is you package up all of your content creators, all of your team into one big package, and you pitch your team to them, right? And so when you start pitching your team, you have all the CCVs of your team as one big package. It's really simple. So the more content creators, the better, because that pitch becomes even higher, and then you can actually like mitigate some of your margin in between some of those players. If you're marketing one player by themselves in their own CCVs, you'll have that sponsorship go for 6 months or something like that, and then you're looking at returns on 6 months or a year and saying, is this worth it to continue, rather than, hey, I've got my entire team, maybe this person's not doing well from a conversion standpoint, but this person's doing well from a conversion standpoint, so our overall org contract works out for our team. So it makes sense that LG would sign a large group together, but when you're signing one individual player, is that worth it? And then when you're signing people that are maybe, not content creators, really just tournament players, is that ever worth it? Because when you start talking about tournament players, their content is their stream and their stream alone. Maybe they run some YouTube videos. Maybe they do things like that that's gonna actually like create some sort of like viewpoints, like CCVs on other platforms, or overall views and impressions on other platforms. But usually our big tournament competitors, we'll use Tommy for instance, isn't really putting out a lot of content, is just driving traffic to their stream. And so how valuable are CCVs is really the ultimate like money question. So it's a fun conversation to have. Not surprised to see Rated and Tommy drop. Will not be surprised if they get picked up by another org that's maybe not S+ like 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves is really good at usually looking at their bottom line and determining whether or not things are worth it pretty quickly, regardless of kind of community sentiment. So I'll be very curious to see who goes for the stab at Tommy and Rated. The other question that this poses is that, as we kind of finish up the episode here, it doesn't look like Katie will be able to come back. The other question that this poses, though, is there was leaks, and I can talk about this now, and this is exactly what Lamb's bringing up. There were leaks, there were conversations going on about Warzone League. Like, this was a real conversation that was being had behind the scenes about this Warzone League that was potentially happening. This is why we saw a quick and dirty pickup of a lot of our Warzone players very early in the Warzone life cycle. When we're talking about NYSL. Oh, Katie is back. Congratulations. Welcome back.
Have I been let out of the dark cave?
Yes, you have. We're talking
here.
We, meaning the chat and I, are now talking about kind of this leak of the Warzone League early in the Warzone lifecycle that caused NYSL to pick up Aiden, that caused 100 Thieves to pick up Tommy and Rated, because these people weren't necessarily picked up for their content. They were originally picked up for this idea of, hey, we're trying to field a Warzone team, on top of the fact that they're driving great CCVs. So the question is, with all of these other people getting picked up, is there another leak happening? Is there another conversation happening of like, oh, if this happens, we want to make sure we have an entry point or not, right?
Right. I think that's the thing. It all really relies on what Activision wants. And from everything that we've ever heard, and look, GOJJ, I'm gonna need you to keep moving because you're so still that I just panicked for a second that my internet had dropped. But it's a great question because a lot of the sentiment we have seen, and I'm not going to speak for anyone, so take this with a grain of salt, is that that's not the direction they're interested in it going. So there might be internal debate happening about this, but I have never seen anything that indicated that Activision does want to step in a truly competitive direction. Maybe they're keeping it massively under wraps. I don't know. I would certainly like to see it go in that direction, but I haven't even heard really a murmuring of that.
Yeah, no, that's where I was going with this next. Is like, maybe there was a leak. Sure. The answer is no, at least not right now, from what we understand, because what's going on behind the scenes is they're probably going to like take a look at how Warzone 2 does overall. And if it is as well received as Modern Warfare 2 from a budget or monetary standpoint, that means the rest of their budget can theoretically increase, which means, we can actually start having a conversation on, is this valuable? Is this worth it? Could we see some sort of longevity with this? The big issue with Warzone since the beginning of the life cycle of this game is not viewership. It's viewership towards one specific channel. There has never been a time where a main broadcast has done better than a individual streamer, whereas that's always the case in any esports league or going on, because A, most players aren't allowed to stream. B, even when they are allowed to stream, the main broadcast viewership is still highly valuable given the tools that game has.
Or co-streaming is deeply limited to a very small amount of people. Like, you can take League of Legends as a great example of this. Not very many people are allowed to co-stream that, and exactly what you said, right? Either they're on LAN, on stage, literally they cannot be streaming, or they're not allowed to, and that does funnel all of that viewership into one location. That is not possible right now with Warzone, and I agree, that does make a lot of those discussions even trickier when you talk about ROI and everything else.
Yeah, and well, that's the other thing too. It's like, we've already established that Warzone viewership is dictated by the people that like certain streamers. What I mean by that is, let's say Huskers just drives, 10,000 people to his stream. That doesn't mean that's CCV, so that's on average. So you're looking at probably an 8 to 10 times multiple of that. So anytime Huskers turns on a stream, he's looking at 80 to 100,000 unique viewers.
Swag.
Yeah.
So many of these people.
Yeah, whoever. We'll use Huskers for an example. Let's say he has 80,000 unique viewers coming through his stream. That doesn't mean 80,000 unique viewers that are interested in seeing a main broadcast that also involves Huskers. They're interested in just watching Huskers and Huskers alone. So when you go to a main broadcast, you're losing like 80 to 90% of those. These are random numbers, but probably something similar in comparison to a game, maybe even like Apex or even like, obviously League. You're not looking for an individual streamer's perspective. You're looking for the general event because I like the game or I like the league that's already been established. It would be very, very, very difficult to retrain the Warzone viewer brain to want to watch an event broadcast. It's probably impossible at this point in its life cycle, in my opinion.
Well, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Once Upon a Time League did this, or at least considered doing this. But there is also a world in which, if they did want to turn it into a pro Warzone scene, formalize things, that one way to solve that problem, and I believe this is what League did at some point, was offering some sort of a subscription service that gives you access during those tournaments to the specific POV of that specific player and only that player that you want to watch. So, for example, maybe you aren't interested in the main broadcast. You don't care about the commentators. You don't care about whatever anyone else is doing. You only want to see Aiden or Huskers. Yeah. Well, then whatever that subscription may be, that nominal fee, gives you access to then just watching that person. I certainly think there's things like that could be an area of discussion. But again, it all hinges on the fact of, are they even in this realm of thought at all? And I don't know if they are. And that does make me, I think, a little bit bummed out for a lot of reasons. But I think, too, it always goes back to the discussion for me, GOJJ, of how many other competitive esports or competitive adjacent games have such a strong top level community of women in that game who consistently place well and are hyper competitive in that arena. And I don't think there are a lot of others outside of Warzone that already have that ecosystem.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, for sure. And I think, albeit League and Warzone are not really a great comparison, it's something that you and I are both familiar with. And of course, they have some incredible,
I think the concept of that is something that I think could, if they choose to go that route, and that concern that you have is very valid, something like a subscription service to that gives you access to exactly who you want to see and maybe their audio and everything else would be a viable way to ease people, I think, into that concept.
Yeah, I think it will have to be an easing process. The biggest comparison you can make is FNCS, Fortnite / Apex, ALGS. Both of those are thriving at least to some degree. The question is, how profitable are they? I think that's another topic of discussion later. But regardless, if you look at ALGS, you look at Apex, you look at Fortnite, and the benefits that the main broadcast bring from a graphics perspective, information perspective, giving you information on the overall event, but mostly and majorly the caster mode that it offers that gives you a larger context on the game that you couldn't get from an individual player's perspective. That's the key. If we're even going to have a conversation about a league, we have to have a very robust caster, commentator, theater, observer mode, whatever you want to call it, or we can't even generally have this conversation, because jumping between Twitch streams is not an actual broadcast, as much as I want to say it is, because it's literally my career, it's built my career. That's not an actual broadcast. That's a glorified watch party. Right. And so
I agree. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head exactly when you say this. There's certain fundamental features that must be baked into the product to then take the next step and have discussions about other things that would come from a more formalized competitive setting. And I do agree that caster mode, yes, you're not going to get the POV of your favorite streamer constantly, which is really what the majority, I think, of these people care about. But providing a experience that you cannot get from any person participating in that event except the main broadcast via that caster mode, providing that information and insight that you otherwise could not get, is absolutely a tangible draw that makes it more valuable, will draw more eyes.
Yep, it is a must, and it's a hope, and I would even say it's a must in general for Warzone, yes. For the future of its showcase even tournaments. Even if we don't go League, I think your showcase tournaments value is just skyrocketing from a viewer perspective, and even potential like CCV's perspective, potential to sell spots for sponsors perspective for main broadcast. It's just a huge win. The question is, how long does it take to build that tech? And how difficult is it? How costly is it? Will that eventually kind of like balance on the spreadsheets? But final conversation for today, after a little bit of a rocky podcast here with the internet, is
my bad.
It's not your fault, not your fault. Is our fake check marks or our bot check marks our Twitter blue? Now, Katie, I feel like I should probably take lead on this, considering you're already verified, so you can give your opinions on it, and I will be one to stand up and say yes. I have paid for Twitter Blue, and I have bought a checkmark for myself. Why is the question? There's a lot of drama in the scene about this checkmark stuff. For good reason, right? For those that have already been verified, either earned or paid, because there was a way to pay for them, by the way, but it doesn't matter. Earned most of the time, for at least in our world. Earned. You earned your checkmark. You're notable. You did something that was notable, or you were in some sort of crazy amount of articles, whatever. Great. Obviously frustrating when you're using your verified tab and on your kind of, I'm not actually slighting you when I say this, but on your kind of ego high horse of I only talk to verified people. This is not at Katie. This is at verified users that are saying this. Now that verified tab is completely clogged with all kinds of people. People that have 100 followers can have a check mark. People that have 1 million followers have a check mark, and you can't delineate between those two unless you click on their name or click on their profile, go into their profile, then click the check mark, which will tell you whether or not it was earned via the old version of the verified system or Twitter Blue. So, Katie, give me your thoughts on it, and then I'll tell you my side of the story on the check mark thing.
Look, if this causes the inevitable downfall of Twitter, I'm on that. I'll lead the charge. I don't really care.
It's incredible.
But look, checkmarks mean nothing anymore. Not that they really meant a whole lot in the first place.
Yeah.
They were so watered down already that it was like, what does it actually mean to have a check mark? It's purely just like a clout ego thing.
Sure.
And it's just the, ooh, this is really shiny and I want this because other people have this, but more people don't have it and I want to be in the cool kids club. It doesn't actually mean anything. But you are right. It does give you visibility. It'll put you toward the top of replies. It'll allow you to know that an account is legitimate. Yep. The fact that they rolled this out without even considering, and I do actually believe I saw something today that Twitter team was like, hey, here's a 7-page document of all the ways that this could be abused if you just suddenly allow people to buy a check mark. And it has been abused. Scammers, people pretending that they're someone they're not, etc. Anyway, long short, it means that the check mark is entirely pointless. And I would actually be very much so on board with no one having check marks except for things like government entities and things like that, as opposed to actual and maybe like massive celebrities. Everyone else, don't care. Put us all in the same pot. But
well, so
yeah, go ahead.
No, I hear you on that, and I agree. And the check marks thing, like, obviously, as somebody that is a caster in this space and that runs 50+% of their business through Twitter and Twitter DMs, it was a no-brainer to pay for this. I don't care about $8 in the end of the day. And I know some people, like, that's an expense that you can't handle, and that's totally fair and a legitimate concern, especially when I say this first point, which is there have been a lot of conversations around Elon even saying, who obviously bought Twitter, if you didn't know that, and has become like the CEO or something, and it's just like changing everything, is that tweets will begin to be suppressed if you don't have a check mark. The check mark's purpose now is to verify that you are a legitimate human being, not a bot or a spam account. And so everybody's going to try to have, he wants everybody to have a check mark. Now, not everybody's going to pay for it, obviously, but if you don't pay for it, your tweets are going to be suppressed because everybody's going to think you're a bot, which...
Well, here's the question, GOJJ, that I actually have. If you are verified, like I am, do your tweets get suppressed because you still have not bought Twitter Blue,
I don't know.
even though you are verified?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of Flowers said in the chat, like, this is public testing. Like, they're just hitting the button that says change things without doing any like micro testing. They're just saying, yeah, roll it out, see what happens. It's caused a lot of issues, but from the my side of things, from a business side, it's like easy duh. If I can make sure my things aren't suppressed, I will pay for it. A. B, if it means that the only people getting DMs read are the people with check marks, because everybody has a check mark. So if you don't, then you're obviously, not a person I need to talk to, then that's a no-brainer as well. I have to. It's obviously a business expense from my line of work, since I do this full time. But it's also the only way I'm going to be able to talk to a brand in DMs, which is, funny enough, actually a thing that I do a lot of times, and a lot of other people do, is you talk to brands in DMs first, and then you can go into a more legitimate form of conversation after, to be verified. Right. There were a lot of concerns with the rollout too, because there was a lot of impersonation really quickly, where there was some really funny and then some like horrible, where, for instance, there is a company that sells insulin. And for those that know the industry, I don't need to go into the medical side a ton, but like insulin was way overcharged. Like, it was absolutely like, it's atrocious, and it like is a life-saving thing that people need.
Gouged.
And it's just crazy price gouge. Well, there's a company that sells it, and somebody impersonated the company, bought Twitter Blue with a better Twitter handle, by the way, than the original Twitter handle. It's like more closer directly tied to the company name. And they tweeted out, insulin is now free for everybody. The company's stock tanked by legitimately 80% amidst other things that were going on with the price gouging. And it was like, oh, there's actually real world ramifications for this. Like, this is something we're not thinking about. There's a lot of other things I wouldn't bring up on the podcast, because they're rough. I mean, people dropping slurs and like all kinds of stuff.
Oh, and look, people took that and abused, which is the most obvious thing in the world that would come out of that. But that's why I sit there and I'm like, I'd rather you just remove check marks entirely and find some sort of verification for people. But again, here's the thing. What he's doing with this is that he's moving Twitter, like Facebook, is free for a reason. It's not actually free. They take your data, they take all your information, and they sell it to a million billion different people. So it's not really free. But if you want to move away from that free model, well, you got to make the money somewhere, and subscription services are one of the most obvious ways that a platform like Twitter would do that. And that is what Elon Musk is trying to do. Granted, I'm sure they're all still going to sell all your data anyway. But people seem to forget as well that Twitter is not, nor really was it ever, this massively, massively profitable company. In 2016, Twitter was very close to the brink of bankruptcy and going down the tubes. Obviously, there was the election that you really kind of took Twitter to this next level because of the use of the platform. But it's going to be curious to see what Elon Musk does with trying to turn Twitter into more of a stable, profitable business. But okay, we're kind of like way off base from where we started things. I think the case in point of this is that the fake check mark, it's not fake. It's a real check mark, just like anyone else's is real. It's just the who's more realsy than the next person. It just seems sort of dumb. And I've seen people with check marks who were previously verified arguing why it's valid for them to be upset. I have seen people who bought it arguing why they shouldn't be upset. Long live Twitter Blue. And Coach, it's a fucking check mark. Who really cares?
Sure. People shouldn't care as much as they do. Definitely. I think there's an interesting conversation here. The only reason this even comes up on our podcast is because the gaming world is intrinsically tied to Twitter. Yes. It always has been, and I don't know if it always will be, considering who knows what's going to happen with Twitter. But it is dumb. It is a stupid conversation, but it's a conversation worth having because gaming is so directly tied. I personally, and this might be a hot take, I think if Twitter goes down in a blaze of glory and everybody stops using it, I think the gaming world is deeply, deeply hurt by that. I think the gaming connectivity between content creators, between, even like brands in the gaming world, like goes drastically down. Where do you go? What am I DMing people on Instagram? Am I on the Reddit subpages now? Like, Twitter has been the place where content creators, gaming people
going back
interact.
in MySpace, Coach.
Like,
Going back.
I think if Twitter goes down a blaze of glory and literally goes down and is gone, somebody somewhere is going to create the new wave and make.
I'm sure someone already
money.
is. I'm sure there has to be people who are already doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying from Lambchat. Like, the gaming timeline, it's set back like 5 to like 6, 7, 8 years because there's just so much interaction and community involvement and sponsorship opportunities and driving interactions to other live streams. And like, there's just so much that goes on Twitter that couldn't really be replicated other places. But then you start thinking about the people that have tried to replace Twitter for the gaming world. Reddit has been a decent place for community discussion, but never a place for community connectivity. Instagram's really never worked well in the gaming scene because nobody really cares.
The app doesn't even work well.
Yeah, true. But then the other things that have popped up, obviously Discord is very intrinsically tied to the gaming world. They don't have a social media platform, but they have connectivity. Could there be some sort of social media Discord thing that could happen? You've got a group like Juked, I believe they were called, that tried to be that intermediary between like a Discord and a Twitter. They tried to be this gaming. That's basically kerfuffled now. It's nobody really picked it up because Twitter is insurmountable at this point. So you're going to see somebody like a Juked or somebody similar to that try to make the first big push if Twitter goes down in a blaze of glory, and they will catch every gamer and gamer community with it if done correctly.
I mean, look, I think something like this, and not that Vine compares to Twitter necessarily, but just bear with me here. If Twitter really goes down in a blaze of glory, I don't think we should underestimate the ingenuity and pace at which things would replace it. I think it would be very rapid. You look at Vine, and then you get TikTok in the ashes of Vine. And what I mean by that is that you get a massively popular, better version of the foundation it was built upon, right? I think you would see fairly rapidly the same thing happen with something like Twitter. And that's what I mean in a sense of something like Twitter having a lack of competition isn't really a good thing. I do agree. It would certainly set back the gaming industry. I just don't think when you look beyond gaming that it's really a net negative if something comes from Twitter failing.
Yeah. Could be a negative, could be a positive. Just depends on how fast it can be executed and created, because the gaming community desperately needs something like that. And the final point on this, and then we can kind of close it out here, Katie, is that I know there was this conversation from Elon about, hey, what if we paid 10% more than every contract on YouTube and bought a bunch of YouTubers to start making long form content on Twitter? That would completely revolutionize the social media that we all know and love. I don't know that it would. It's really hard to retrain the human brain in an entire population of Twitter users that never look for long form content on Twitter. The longest video I've ever watched on Twitter is like, I think my caster reel, which is like 3 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody does that. So if they start upgrading Twitter from like a video perspective, maybe, I just don't think that's going to be a valuable use of money, and that would ultimately drive it deeper into bankruptcy. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and again, these are massively high-level conversations that I am sure are happening with many people far smarter on this situation than us as we sit here and speculate. But I find it funny when we talk about Shitter's Digest. We always sit here and we say, what should we talk about? Obviously, big things like Tommy and Rated out at 100T, big signings from LG with 5 people coming in. But the fake check marks, it did cause a little bit of a dust up, and Lord knows we needed it, because Shooter's Digest was feeling a little dusty. There wasn't a lot going on, and I know now that Warzone 2 is about to come out, I feel like Shooter's Digest will start filling itself out again with some more juicy morsels.
I totally agree. Well, that is all on the Elon Musk controversy, at least for now. I know there was some other little inklings of things. He like talked on Twitter with Fwiz about potentially hopping over and joining the Twitter team, because
I don't think that goes
he was talking about YouTube and things like that. it was pretty cool. But hey, that's all we've got. Shooter's Digest. This has been the Bot Lobby podcast. Katie, final thoughts? Where can people find you, of course, and then also anything that you've got exciting that you're working on?
All the socials scrolling below us. Got some stuff in the works. Can't quite talk about any of it just yet, but really excited to see competitively what comes out of Warzone 2. Looking forward to it. And of course, once again, a massive congratulations, long overdue, to Newbz on joining Luminosity.
Yeah, heck yeah. Grandmaster GOJJ, all major socials, trying to rebrand to GOJJ sometime, but I've got to make some power moves to grab that four-letter handle. Yeah, just did a Brawl Stars tournament, which was crazy. 3 days of hosting for Brawl Stars. And Brawl Stars community welcomed me with open arms. Really appreciated it. They gave me so much love. Excited about Warzone Mobile, potentially events coming down the line for that. That would be sick. And of course, Warzone 2.0. Let's be very clear. Hire Katie and I for Warzone 2.0. We want it. We got to have it. We've got the most experience in the industry, in the Warzone scene. I think on paper that is actually true in terms of in the booth. Of course, maybe other people have played the game more, but in the booth, there's nobody that parallels our experience. Would love to work it. Other than that, I think that's all we got for the episode, Katie. Folks at home, thanks for joining us, wherever you watch us. Until next time, we'll see you then.